Let's make an 1880s sunbonnet. Good day everyone, my name is Caitlin. I'm a living historian who educates other living historians by teaching old-fashioned sewing skills and copying original garments. I got invited to an invitation-only, private 1880s event that is going to be in less than a week, and I realized that my 1880s wardrobe is not up to that. I don't think I've ever done anything for late bustle that was ever more than a single day. So I don't have the infrastructure to deal with this, and I have 5 days left. It'll be fine. Anyway, I'm gonna make a sunbonnet because this isn't necessarily a super fancy thing, and the only bonnet I actually have for 1880s is a velvet bonnet, and it's too hot for that. So I'm gonna make a sunbonnet. I'm going to be using Marna Davis's pattern. She collects original garments and she patterns her originals. So this is her 1880s sunbonnet pattern that we're going to be using. I had to text her for help because I don't know the 1880s nearly as well as I know the mid-19th century. And most of the fabric collection that I have is early to mid-19th century because that is what I do most of the time. And so I had to send her pictures, help, I don't know what to pick. And so she helped me narrow it down to a few. We're going to be using this blueprint today, which I think is a little brighter than I would prefer, but it'll work and it'll be good. So we're going to be using this fabric for our sunbonnet. I love this pattern in Marna's. I've always admired it, even though I really don't do a lot of 1880s, because of we would call it a prairie point edging on it. I call it sawtooth edging. I've also heard Van Dyke edging. There's a couple other terms for it. It is an absolute favorite trim of mine. Several years ago, I think we were just starting the channel, so it's probably been 6-ish years ago, I made an 1830s dress that was entirely trimmed out with these sawtooth edges. And there's a couple other things we have done recently with the edging as well, and so now I get the opportunity to do it on a bonnet. So I'm really excited about this actually, even though I don't typically do the 1880s. I have not decided if I'm going to do a slat bonnet. Actually, yes, because I don't like corded bonnets. We're going to make a slat bonnet. I thought about not doing a slat bonnet because I don't know if I have any slats. We'll figure that out when we come to it. I'm pretty sure I have something available. I just don't know where I put them. But I think I have some. I think so. If not, I'll go to the store. It'll be fine. But yeah, I have all the pattern pieces here. I have my fabric here that has already been washed. And we're going to make ourselves a lovely little bonnet. All right, let's get this cut out. I asked Marna about which way I should lay this fabric. I said, should it be going with the slats or opposite? She said with the slats. So that was my inkling, but always good to have an expert weigh in on that. So happy to have her assistance there. I'm going to use some bias. I'm sure it says on the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting some. Just from here, I suppose. So that's 10 right there. And I'll make your guesses now. How many little squares am I going to have to cut to go all the way around a bonnet? And I think it's on the back, not really brim, but on the back part too. Alright, beginning on the sunbonnet. So I'm taking all of the, there's so many of them, little prairie points, sawtooth edges, Van Dykes, whatever you want to call them. And I'm just going to set them on here. It started getting to the point where they actually match up to this, which I don't know if is a great idea because you're not going to see them as readily if they match up. But automatically, just putting them in, the first 4 did. At that point, I felt like I kind of had to because I started a pattern unnecessarily or unknowingly, I suppose. Now I'm just finding ones that actually match and putting them in like that. So they're going to be a little bit invisible, but it'll be okay. So that's this. So that's this first step. Now I need to attach the crown. So move that out of the way. Here's my crown that I've gathered by hand. There's my center, which is going to go right on the fold. And this matches. And then this side gets put in the same way. And then I'll gather it up. Obviously, I will link the pattern below if you want it. I highly suggest Marna's patterns. Her patterns are amazing. She is such a talented pattern maker and tracer of original garments. So I highly suggest her patterns, especially for their authenticity. It's actually not going to be as gathered as I thought it would be. Now, I've learned in the past with these Van Dykes is you want to make sure the corners stay put. If you don't get the corners to stay put, they like to move around while you're sewing. Especially because I'm not hand stitching this. If I was hand stitching this, I'd be able to have a little bit more control over what was going on, but with a machine, you really don't have as much control as you think you do. So there's that. And the goal here is to make it fairly even with the other side. I feel like we're doing so many 1880s, 1870s projects lately, and I don't even do that much of that time period. It's just all kind of happened at once where I needed some bustle era stuff. So this is a little unusual for me to do this much all together. That is going to get stitched all the way around. You know, as we've been doing, I think we'll just use the 1870 sewing machine because it's appropriate for this time period. I mean, I technically do have an 1880s machine, but it's rusted and it was used as a doorstop at an antique store for probably a decade or so. So it's not exactly in usable condition, let's say that. Right, I started putting the Van Dykes on the edge and then I realized I hadn't filled the seam. And so I'm going to do that. So I'm doing that very quickly. Just making sure it's all nicely finished. It doesn't need to be filled all the way around, just in the parts that aren't going to be covered by the brim facing. Alright, now I can go back and finish putting all of these around the edge and, well, hopefully keep all my pins in. I'm trying to instead of pinning the centers, pinning the edges here, and I'm hoping that helps keep everything in place. It only works if I catch both of them, which I have apparently not been doing some of the time. Alright, I'm working on adding these lovely little things throughout the entirety of the outside of this bonnet. And I'm pinning each and every one down, that way it just stays in place. And so this next step, well, okay, we're going to be doing like 3 things at once. So it's going to be kind of chaotic for just like a minute. We're starting with pinning these in. I'm not going to sew them in yet. I'm just going to pin. I am just going to pin them. And then we're going to attach the brim facing and the binding. And that's when I stitch it. So I'll be stitching like 3 things in at once. Saves a little bit of time that way. That one wasn't even. Let's cut that off. So here's part of my brim facing. And I just put random pins in this one. So that stays there. Everything around here is going to need binding. I also forgot about the facing on the inside of this thing. I need to do that too. That should have been done earlier. Oh look, I have some bias. What was this for? And there are 4 ties, which I did hem up those sides. Well, I haven't hemmed them yet. So I ironed up the sides, so we can hem them. That's another step I need to take as well. Right now my main goal is just going all the way around the entire front, sides, back of this bonnet and putting in all the little Van Dyke sawtooth prairie point things. And then I have to double check to make sure that none of them have fallen out on the other side while I was doing this side. I guess I can check that while I put in the bias, which again I'm going to need to cut apparently because either I forgot that or I misplaced it or something because I don't have any. And that will be the easiest period correct way to finish the seam off. So this is the center back. I forgot to do little eyelets so we can gather this up. There also needs to be a bit of fabric in the back, which I might just hand stitch in. And it's basically a casing so that this can be gathered up. I have a tie, or I have 2 ties, that'll go in here as well. This would have been easier prior to pinning all of the sawtooth to this, but you know, I forgot. not only this, but I also need to put ties in there. The ties aren't sewn. So let's cut some bias and attach it to this. Then I can sew all that, get all these pins out, which will help significantly, sew the ties, and then do that part. That makes more sense. Okay, so this is sewing on the binding, all the little triangles, and the facing in the front, the brim facing. And we're doing that all in one seam. And then I can focus a little bit more on that back that I should have done earlier. This is what happens when I don't read directions. In my defense, I don't understand written directions very well, for sewing anyway. And now I have something that resembles a bonnet. A very floppy bonnet, but a bonnet. So, it's all flipped inside out. I have this all pinned because we will need to put slats in there. I also pinned the bias on the inside. So let's go ahead and stitch that down, which I'm going to stitch it so you see the chain stitch on the front. Alright, when I go to sew slats, I always like to start with the very top as a seam. That's just personal preference. Okay, we'll be sewing right down the center of the blue. That's not bad, and it will help keep me a little bit more on par and focus, because I can keep my presser foot directly in that line. That'll help a lot. Going all the way to the end, we're just going most of the way to the end. About an inch or so away is where I'm going to stop. And this isn't going to be the decorative stitch on top, unfortunately, just because I want to make sure it's straight. And it's hard to do that from the underside. Although I'm pretty sure they're both cut straight, I can't guarantee it. And it may have been okay, but it'll look good the way it is too. Alright. Now I do have to find the slats. Well, I could do the back. I could do the back and avoid the slats for a little bit longer. Alright, only because I already have all this shoved in and sewn in. I'm doing this part by hand. I think this can very well be done by machine. It's just, I didn't want to have to with all the gathering and all that. I just thought I could control it a little bit better by hand. And I already put the ties in there, so I'm trying not to sew them except at the ends where I need to put them in. That way it works like a casing and a drawstring. That's the idea anyway. So from the front, this is the side that I'm sewing on. Let me just make sure I didn't catch it at all. Hey, would you look at that? It actually works. And it's sewn in, and I can pull the whole thing. Cool. I did a good job there. Now I'm ready to sew the slats, which I have marked. So I have them marked every 1.5 inches. And we're going to sew through this. I was not able to find my wooden slats, but I made some. So I took 3 sheets of cardboard and used rubber cement, which actually is a period glue. It was, I think, 1830s was when it came out. Anyway, and I pasted the 3 layers together. So it's kind of like pasteboard now, which is a period. Machine, so I I'm going to have to, on each and every one of these threads, tie it off very, very well if I want this to stay, which is fine. We are winding down on the project. So this is ties, or yeah, this is one of the ties that I'm stitching right into this front. And then we'll put in slats and finish out the back. Now we get to put the slats in. So these are my faux pasteboard slats. They'll hold up at least for a little while. I'll have to replace them eventually. I probably could have done a fourth layer of cardstock. My main goal is, as long as it holds it out, which this will, then I'm good. And these stitches are meant to be fairly removable because you need to take the slats out to wash the bonnet. So they do not have to be nice or neat. They just need to hold the slats in. And this is my final project, which is good because I have to leave tomorrow, which means I have to pack, which I have most of my clothes already put to the side, so that won't be a problem. It's just I gotta go grab like my bedding stuff and whatever I want to bring to sew and keep myself busy. My obligatory bring a project to sew on and never work on it for the entirety of the event because I'm too busy chatting with people. Then we get to flip this right side out because it is inside out right now. Alright. There's my sunbonnet. Alright, here's our lovely bonnet. And there's a cat playing with paper in the background, so I apologize. This is after the event. It went wonderfully, and bonnet was such a big help. It was very warm out, and so this helped a lot. Hair is not exactly in the right spot for 1880, so I apologize, but it's late at night. And I just want to show you what it looks like. Maybe I should put my hair up in a better place. This isn't going to look great, but it will get my hair in a slightly more 1880s place. Love the sawtooth edging. I mean, again, it's like my favorite type of trim. But it's so cute. Like, it's so bright and vibrant, especially because, you know, I had both brown dresses, so this was like the perfect addition of color. Marna made a very good choice, so thank you, Marna, for your help in picking fabric from my stash. There's the back. There's the poofiness to accommodate the higher hair. This is where my hair was. That's why it wasn't sitting right, because that's where the tie is. But yeah, I mean, I understand why people say they feel like they're in the mailbox, like inside a mailbox when they wear slat bonnets. I don't mind it. I actually very much prefer a slat bonnet to a corded bonnet because I find that corded bonnets like to droop, and that irritates me. I want a nice smooth edge to my bonnet. I don't want to see fabric creeping in, and I live and reenact in very humid parts of the world. And so even if I well starch my bonnets, they will start to droop unless there's something in here keeping it out, which is what a slat bonnet does. So although they're not the most flattering, they are the best for sun protection, and I do prefer a slat bonnet. So that's just personal preference for me. But I know there were corded bonnets in this era, mostly because I own an original 1890s or 1880s sunbonnet that is corded. So like, I know they exist, but again, this is my personal preference. I do prefer an 1860s sunbonnet though. I like the longer curtains of the 60s. I just think it's more elegant. I know a lot of people do not agree with me on that one either, but I like that. I don't like the poofiness at the top as much. But again, this is just a product of the time. So for an 1880s bonnet, knowing I needed an 1880s bonnet, absolutely love it. It turned out great. Pattern was super easy to follow. Again, love sawtooth edging, so anytime I get to do that, that's a lot of fun. Even though it is a lot of tedious work, it is still a lot of fun. But I think that's about it for today. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe to the channel, click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.